In a world of fractured stories, timelines buried, and truths erased, one project dares to ask the question, what if everything you thought you knew about history was wrong? This is GTR, Genesis, Timeline and Roots. A 5,025-year simulated walkthrough tracing a melanated Adam back to 4000 BC. Over the last decade, new revelations confirm a black origin for humanity, from European vaults to tribal memory, Babylon to Britain. This is not just history, this is a challenge, a simulation, a movement. Meet the man behind GTR, Dr. Wilton MacDonald II, Caymanian, British, Jamaican, haplogroup E and stateless for 26 years. Now a global explorer, 119 countries and counting. A hedge fund lawyer, a UK chartered accountant, a seeker of the lost archives of our people. But the question remains, if all black people came out of Africa, does that make us only African? Or are we also European, Scottish, Native American, Jacobite Hebrew, Asian? GTR exists to answer that question. You've felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. A splinter in your mind. That splinter has brought you here, to GTR. Whites can't trace their roots before the 1800s. Where's ours? Where are the tribes? The languages, the kings, the queens, the true Hebrews? Where did the giants go? Where are the Neanderthals? Angels, aliens? Why do we speak in so many tongues? Was Babel just a myth? A memory? History has holes. Hollywood has lied. The system was never made for us to remember. Only 5 to 8% of people today are white. And what about the 1800 stories and postcards of the cabbage babies? But nearly all history books center their story. That doesn't add up. Atlantis, lost cities, vanished civilizations, or were they erased? Try GTR. Take the red pill and awaken to the truth of your ancestors. Or take the blue pill and keep dreaming a fantasy. GTR. A simulated walkthrough of Black Hebrew history and eschatology. This is the beginning of remembering.
Well, good morning, good evening, Cayman. This is your host, Dr. Wilton MacDonald, and we have an exciting episode for you. This is a GTR, Genesis Timeline Roots, episode 20. Here today, I'm joined by two young up-and-coming journalists from Kenya. We have Samuel Lengesia and David Wakesa. And I'm happy that, to have them on GTR. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. And I think it's just appropriate for the audience at GTR to be introduced to each of you. So go ahead. Who wants to go first? Samuel, go ahead, take the lead, and introduce yourself. Tell me about yourself and what you're currently working on. This episode is focusing on the background, the colonial background of Kenya.
I'm born in Kenya. I have a history in Kenya, and being a journalist, I've been in spaces where there are so many questions in what we witness, in what we see, and we are always yearning to know the truth about so much that you have been told has happened earlier on. I've listened to some of your videos, and there are always gaps of years where you feel like we were just in some caves, in some dark zone. But it's good as a professional journalist to bring out this truth, to let the masses know the truth. And it is said if you know where you're coming from, then it will be easier for you to know where you're going to.
All right. So David, why don't you just go and jump in and just tell me about it? Because it's important. We met at the Mandela Leadership Summit, and that's what connected us to Kenya in the first week of February when I visited. So David, tell me about yourself and in what you're working on, because the theme here, the episode is focusing on the white colonial development and ancestry of Kenya. So go ahead and introduce yourself, David.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Wilton. I am David Wakesa, a student at KCA University pursuing a bachelor's in education arts, but I'm an historian. I'm doing a lot in history, and that's where my passion is. Currently, I'm focusing on the history of Kenya and the Black history at large, the history of African continent, and trying to change, or rather trying to rewrite our own history and erase what people are trying to believe that is true, but in real sense, it is not true about us and about the black man. And I'm so excited about the today's episode, talking about the history of colonization in our continent.
We definitely want to dispel the sort of half and truths, and because the whole point in GTR is to set up a proper timeline, a historical timeline, also take into account the true history of Europe, as I make it clear that this backdrop remains the important painting, the most important piece that I've uncovered, showing what Europe looked like in the 1700s and 1706, showing Germany, Poland, Lithuania, even Sweden. So if these persons who occupied Europe just recently in 300 years were black, then that calls into question everything, all our history about the white Jesus, the white apostles, the white kings, and Africa is really relevant. Things that have contributed to modern society, because that's what the average, call it narrow-minded racist, would say. You in Africa, you did not contribute. That's why we need to exploit and take your resources and help you because you did not contribute. This painting, along with other photos of, say, the cabbage babes, this sets the record straight because this then shows that Black people were leading in countries that were developing and the source of our modern age. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people connect with families. We're trying to help people. There are a lot of people that come to me and say, well, Dr. McDonald, I can't connect with my father, my mother. I don't know my grandfather. And that serves the purpose of genealogy and searching. But the timeline is important because if you're going to compose an essay, if you're going to write a story, you have to create an outline. You need to have that outline to know where you're going. If you're doing a movie script, there's an outline. If you're going on a journey, there's an outline. There's always that outline. We're trying to provide, even the human body. If you take away the skeletal frame, the whole thing crashes and falls down. You need to have a framework. You need to have an outline. And that's the outline that's been distorted because then they say about the animals, the monkeys, and how the path to Africa. And you see, we're all here Africans, Nigeria and Kenyan, and the pathways of this ancestor 100,000 years ago, which is nonsense. And the pathway goes to Africa. And they're saying that their pathway went through an Indian looking person, a Meso-Indian that led to a white person. But the problem with all of that analysis is you have the Aboriginal person. How can the Aboriginal person come from the white person? They have holes, they have problems with their stories. So I'm happy and excited, and this is it where we're looking at Kenya's so-called white history, and we're trying to present different angles and points of view. We're trying to build up a narrative as to how we can, in order to understand how we can help Africa, then we need to know the true beginnings of a modern Africa. And this can help us to grow Africa, help us to uh, work with different, programs to move Africa along and the sixth region. Mind you, my role is not just on GTR, but also my role is as CEO of ADDI, which is the African Diaspora Development Institute. Our mission is to merge and connect the sixth region, which is going to be all persons of African connection and connectivity in outside of the continent and with the continent, and is formally recognized by the African Union as that sixth region. So we have a number of initiatives, not just in the Mandela Institute. We have gone to Burkina Faso now. This will be the fourth time we'll be visiting. We have gone to South Africa. We've gone to Niger, Cameroon, Central African Republic, which I visited, and even the north of Africa, which almost seems like a different world. Just on the other side of desert and sand, it seems isolated, different, even different ethnicities. But what I took from my studies and my research in North Africa just 2 years ago was that from the faces of people, of the stones that I saw, the images going back 1,000 years in Roman villages, these faces were removed. It's obvious that it was done in a deliberate attempt. And the people will tell you, they will say, we can't eat the wheat. We can't eat the food that was produced. We need genetically modified crops. They look different than the other remaining Africans. And so we have to look at Africa, what it is. They tell you that their ancestors were black. They're actually telling you that they were Berber, blue, and black people. And the people in South Africa who claim to be European, we're finding out now that they are not European. They did not descend from Europe. And we have, in even episodes I've discussed, there's one playing tonight on the cabbage babies, on those that came to South Africa, came in cages, literally cages to South Africa, came to New Zealand, came to Australia in small cages. And that's a history that's not in the books. This is a way of, we're not here to out anyone. We're not here to be mean and to be prejudiced in any way. I am mixed race. We all have that mixed heritage, but it's the truth is the truth. So it is tonight that we present this episode. We're looking at Kenya. We're homing in on your home, Kenya. And if you look at the Wikipedia page, white people in Kenya, they refer to, they say that the Kenyans are born and resident, their descendants, right? These white people. But again, this painting in my background will forever be my background. Why? Because this is Poland. All of this is kings of Poland, of Germany, of Sweden. And this was 1706, captioned the Morse quadrille. It's a painting that's in Germany. They refuse to show it publicly. And it's one that has all the European kings, which tells you that the sons and daughters of Africa were black people, not just Moors, not just the expression, well, the Moors were in Europe. That is a derogatory term. That's a term that suggests that the Africans came to just wash up the locals and clean them up and give them some information on math, and then they went back home. No, they actually, I'm sorry, they actually moved, they actually lived, they actually built and migrated, and they lived and built up Europe. So the technology that we enjoy, all the brand names, the cars, the Adidas, the Volvo, the Mercedes, the BMW, BMWs, the brands that they enjoy today, those were inspired and made by Black people. And so our history needs to be re-examined. So where did then these people come from? Where were the first persons? They said that populations from Italy and Greek, but Italy and Greece were Black places, as my research into Europe would definitely point out and suggest. And so, what are some of the first persons who came? This is where it is the age of discovery first led to European interaction with the region present-day Kenya. The coastal regions were seen as valuable foothold in Eastern trade, and the Mombasa became a key port for ivory. The Portuguese, and they were Black too, they established a presence in the region for 200 years. Now, 1498 and 1698, I have a problem because then they said, well, before losing control to the Sultan of Oman, the Fort Jesus was captured. So the timeline, Genesis timeline serves many purposes. It's to outline history, it's to do genealogy, but it's also a timeline. That's why it's called Genesis Roots and Timeline, right? GTR, Genesis Timeline and Roots. The timeline, it's one that does not take into account this dark ages where this 500 became 1500. And you notice that it says 1498. So 1498 was really 498, and 1698 was really 698. And we today are not in 2026. We are in 1026 because they inserted these dark ages because they want people to believe that people went to sleep. We were hibernating. We were like bears. We went to sleep. And then all of a sudden, 1,000 years later, we woke up, just pop up and just woke up, break dancing all around, just the flurry of activity. No, the dark ages were never dark. They just never existed. So with the time period that they're giving you as to the influx and influence of Europeans into Kenya, it's really 400s to 600s. And how long ago was that? Well, we're now in 1026, but it's roughly 300 plus years. I mean, almost 1700. We're a little over 328 years from that period. Now, the European exploration of the interior commenced in 1844 or 844. Two German missionaries, Johann Ludwig Krampf and Johannes Rebmann, ventured inland with the aim of spreading Christianity. And we know Christ is not white guy, Christ is Black. So they're spreading Christianity. And the region sparked the imagination of other adventurers who came and they gradually their stories to awaken the governments to the potential of the area. So they're talking about those people who came there. And later on, they would have 19th century with William Mackinnon, and he would have been Scot-Irish. But I did look at the Krampf and Rebman. So let's look at it. This person is Johann Ludwig Krampf. Who is he? Born 1810. Suspect, because my period when these whites came about was the 1800s. And that would be more the middle, well, early to middle of 1800s. So, when he born? What was his father and mother? Who were the fathers and the father and mother here in question? That's a portrait. And we know that commercial photography was not available until the mid 1800s. You see, you need to bear these dates and notice in mind now that is some kind of sketch. He looks like a white guy. And he died in the German Empire, in Germany. He's born in Germany and he died in Germany. But let's look further. But he was born to Lutheran family of farmers, Southwest Germany, school days. I mentioned this before. Wikipedia used to give a lot of information on ancestry, but I called them, I initiated threats, legal threats, and I said, you cannot make it up. When you, years, 2, 3, 5 years ago, when you went to Wikipedia, you could go and see someone's grandfather, great grandfather, and you go back and go back and go back and go back. But some royals, you can do that. And I contend that a lot of the royals, like King Charles today, look at Putin. Would you say that Vladimir Putin is a white man? Vladimir Putin is someone uh, of color because of his DNA. Vladimir Putin is a haplogroup E like me, but he looks white. So they did not say a lot. I hear about his journey to Ethiopia and the Anglican church that he was with, but it does not say much about his ancestry. And this is Krampf. It says here that residence occupation, not much information here. Okay, this appears to be his father, a Johann Jakob Krampf in 1773, born in Germany, Deutschland, died in 1846. No portrait, just some kind of record. But what he was, that a lot of those people who were white did not really have fathers because they were, call it made. They were a thing linked to labs. They would have been made and there would be no ancestry. Well, according to this was the grandfather. This would be Johann Jakob Krampf Sr. in Germany. And there's no portrait. There was really no other name of Krampf on my tree. I've been doing research on all of Europe and pretty much the planet, really. My tree is over 1 million in size. And the name of Krampf does not exist. I mean, there is a something, and then they're trying to say this is the great grandfather, 1716. They're going back even further. No portrait at all. We don't even know what he looked like. And this is making it up. And in my tree, I was able to find that there were no surnames. Johannes Rebmann, 1820, again in Germany. Do we have anything? Oh, white guy. No surprise, 1820. But what about his early life? Born to a Swabian farmer and wine grower in January 16, 1820, in Gerlingen, Wettenberg, a village small, about 1,500 inhabitants. Does not indicate who the fathers, who the parents. They just simply make it up. I can't even say it. I gotta speak another language. I have to just say it in another tongue. They just simply made it up. And there's just no one here. Okay, so this is the gentleman that we were talking about, because we looked at Krampf. We're talking about the early white settlers of Kenya and those persons who were the founding fathers as far as white people in Kenya that brought the language because they came either from Germany or from England. And this person, Johannes Rebmann, I found some genealogical information. So confirmed that he was born in 1820. He was born in Germany, and looks like he also died in Germany. Now, the ancestral information, sometimes it's sketchy. It doesn't present and give you much information. I looked at things like in Wiki. So born to Swabian farmer, and it does not go into detail about who his parents were. It doesn't describe in any great detail. But I think that I was able now to find on a family tree a connection to other people who were not likely to have been white. There's a Johann Michael Redman in 1755. I was able to find this record in my tree, and there are people who I was able to connect with, but again, I am not quite certain, and I'm pretty sure that they were not call it white. Now, this was already in my tree even before I started the research, and this shows. Okay, a white-looking face. You have a wolfgang, um, musculus. And this is the 1400s. This is no way, no way, no way this would have been right. We have a Valentin Redman. You see here record, but this was 1520. And I've had this record in my tree before I could perform the research on Kenya. So there were black Germans. I mean, after all, look at the painting. I have this other writer, this one in particular, right here. His name was Frederick van Ecksted, Ecksted from Germany. So here in this painting, you have a black German. So this would be the 1500s or 500s. And this was already in my tree, and they're Redmonds. But Crumpf, as a surname, it was just invented and made up. Now, I have some other characters, not just these alone. I have other people who I researched because lo and behold, there were other people who were families, right? They were visiting Kenya, and this is tying in with some of um, David's research. Okay, so here it is that you have a scholarly examination of five founding families. Did you manage, David, to look into any of these families? Starting the first one called Pieter or Pete Joubert, Joubert, Joubert. I mean, it's French, but Afrikaan. So, did you look at this particular family? These are five families. I looked at the first two. I looked at Joubert, and the second one would have been Rensburg. Did you look at any of this? Because this information I got from you.
Yes, yes. I looked at the Jobart's family for the five first families that landed in Kenya, and they're being described from the material you are sharing that the families that trekked from South Africa to the British East Africa back in late 1880s. The Jobart's family stand as the most historically significant because you find out that they were like the pioneer family to uh, to trek from South Africa, or rather to move from South Africa to Kenya. And the reason is there are a lot of reasons. Maybe after the war of the war wars in that was being fought in South Africa. Those are some of the factors that caused them to migrate to the British East Africa.
Well, I found Joubert in my tree, but I could not line up this particular family. I just could not. There was a problem in lining up the names, and there are a lot of Peters or Pieter, a lot of them. That's one Pieter Gideon. This one is again a Peter Gideon Joubert. And I have found different Joubert families, but it was a problem for those specific ones, the ones that were named in the records you shared with me from Kenya. I have a real problem in finding and connecting to those individuals. It's like they never existed. There's a real problem, and I have a lot of Jouberts, a lot. I mean, I have records upon records. Here's one guy in the 1700s, supposedly white, but a lot of these images, they just whitewashed them. You have a person who is married to a venter and last name Botha. I used to work with a person called Botha from South Africa, so I mean I'm familiar with that surname. But how and where? Why? These individuals that they came to be. This is from South Africa. Let me look at it because I have done some work on this line. Okay, this is the line. This is what I've done. Now, after 1832, the trail is cold. Now, I wasn't able to connect those individuals. Okay, I mean those particular individuals, because here it is that we were given a bill of the goods, a Piet Joubert, and under him, his kin would be Johannes Joubert and Abraham. Very Hebrew names, Black Hebrew. Yes, indeed. Josa, Ayan, daughter of Josa. I wasn't
Mhm.
able to find these particular individuals. I just wasn't able to find them and track them. But I found others. And you could see here, they're now pictured as white. You have a Johannes Jobert, you have a Pieter Gideon, and then you have a Pieter Gideon Jobert in 1832. And that's where the paintings and portraits stopped. Very rarely do you go back even further. And this takes you all the way into South Africa. But what? It hits France. And we know France is black. Come on. Napoleon. Napoleon, man. Napoleon is a, not just Napoleon was described as black. And you see, I hit Napoleon because French is spoken so many countries in Africa. Come on. I'm going to Burkina next week. Cote d'Ivoire. You have Central African Republic. We have the northern part of Africa. French is dominant. Why is it so dominant? Because just like in the Caribbean, Haiti was very dominant. Haiti was called the pearl of the Antilles. It was so rich. Nowadays, Haiti is like laughed at. Oh, you're poor. You can't even afford food. And people will scoff at and mock because Haiti, but it was very rich. So the Frank Empire, remember the Franks that sacked Rome, the Frankish Empire, they formed Benelux. The Benelux countries, that's Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, all of that empire and France are they're the oldest Franks, the Saxons. The Franks were black people. They're black. Napoleon was black. And I'm pretty sure Louis the 16th would have been clearly black. But they made every effort to scour and destroy records that suggested him he lost his head. Even he had a head cut off, but Louis the 16th, but Napoleon was black. In fact, they confirmed that Napoleon's DNA, it's the same as mine. It's an E. So it's a sub-Saharan DNA profile as Emperor Napoleon. And look, we have the Joubert line goes back to 1490 into France. So it's the Joubert. I cannot speak French, but Joubert. And the T is silent. And that is the line that goes back. And it's not South African, it's ultimately European. And they make it seem that the South Africans were Dutch and Boers, they were Dutch. But I've tested a lot of Dutch people in Aruba and other colonies, and they're black people. They have signatures A, B, D, C, D, E, DNA signatures to black people. So this line takes you into France, and I call it Black France. But all these characters here, they put the paintings, they portraits as white people and clear signs of whitewashing. So that was one family in Kenya that I looked at. And the other one would be Rensburg. What did I see about Rensburg? Let me see if I have it and it tracks in my tree. I love this. This tree is famous. I love this tree. Let's see if Rensburg comes up. I could not go beyond 1843. See? Again, hands up in the air. I cannot go before and beyond the 1800s. I'm stuck. This is the name of the second prominent family that migrated, and that's the year 1908. I really couldn't find. Look, these are all people born in 1954. I really couldn't find a particular person who was who was named in that record. And I found people who I connect with, but the portraits might be wrong. And it clearly, I cannot go beyond Frederick. Uh, his name is Frederick Rodolphus Jansen van Rensburg. End of the line. That's EOL. 1843. That's it. No photo, no portrait. His wife, yes, something, but no portrait for the man. And then his son was Johannes. And then that was their 1864. And then on to that son would be the grandson, Stephanus. And that would be 1901. Born in South Africa, 1901, died in Rhodesia, 1965. And it's just his wife now was Marius, South Africa. Marais, Katharina. As you could see, it was hard. And these are people who connect, but I cannot verify who their parents were and grandparents. It's like they fell out of the sky. Cabbage babies. They just fell out of the sky. So tell me about your work now. Tell me, David, I'm very interested. I had the floor and I want to know about the families that you looked at. And I'll go back to this. Did you go further after the Rensburg? Did you go and then touch on the other families? That would be Cloete, and then we have Betoit, and then you have the Prinsloo and Bear. Did you examine any of the other families?
Yes. Briefly about the Kuwait family, and in those days, well, back in South Africa, the Kuwait family is believed to be uh, a former member of the Orange River Colony Legislative Assembly, and he was they are the kind of people who are giving the laws of apartheid, and the origin of apartheid from South Africa. And in Kenya, it is believed that they arrived in 1911, and they landed in a plateau, Uasin Gishu County, just around 300 kilometers from Nairobi. And according to Groen, the Kuwait families is the second largest Afrikaners trek to the British East Africa, and the largest was the Van Resenberg family, who have around 200 to 300 people who crossed the Indian Ocean from South Africa to the British East Africa uh, Protectorate. And the record the record shows that the now Mr. Coet, J. C.J. Collett, uh, he held a permit from now the Orange River Colony Administration, allowing him to explore the substantial numbers of horses, cattle, and sheep. These are the people, like, they were coming full packed. They had invested in South Africa within a short period of time, and that brings another reason why these people did come from Europe directly, because uh, they had invested a lot. They had good numbers of cattle, horses, and massive wealth in agricultural productions, animals, and everything. And the war that was being fought from 1898 to 1902 it really affected them, and that's why they were trying to find a place where they going to protect their their wealth, you know? And that's the reason they crossed the land. Now, the colonial land to the colonial land board and served as a delegate to the conservation of associations. Remarkably, the achievements of a man who had arrived barely a year earlier represented a community that British settlers viewed as a subcaution, a supercussion. And later, in 1990, in 1912, he died. Uh, and from that point, his family, or rather his people, the daughters and the people he migrated with from South Africa to Kenya, I did find out they are correct, because after the death of now Mr. Coet, the wife, uh, Miss uh, Boshoff, Miss Boshoff, uh, was the one now running the program, or rather the business of the family. But you cannot. I didn't find out a correct, a fluent, or rather smooth flow of this family, as you are arguing with the same way the first two families. You cannot track the flow of their families. You find out that after the death of now the man, or rather the head of the family, you find out that the other family members started vanishing.
But a description, the European ancestry of Afrikaan, of Kenya, would be French Huguenot. The labels matter. George Washington himself in America, the president of America, the first president of America, was described as a Huguenot. He was a black man. I know the little white here and the images that you see on the currency. No, it's not. This Huguenot, there were black people. They were described as all black people. So in the description of Huguenot, it's there. But what's striking, who were the Afrikaners? People without European roots they could name. And it says this is Afrikaners that arrived in Kenya at the beginning of the 20th century. People from European ancestry loosely acknowledged in the historical records, practically untraceable at the individual family level. And you talked about Groen's dissertation. Makes no attempt to trace the European genealogies of the Joubert, the Van Rensburg, the Cloete, Du Toit, Prinsloo families. The records did not exist in accessible form, and these were not aristocratic settlers with documented lineages stretching back to Amsterdam or Paris. They were frontier farmers, call it bywanners, transport riders, trek commanders, whose identity had been forged entirely in the harsh landscapes of southern Africa. This is important because we get the sense that, look, what is the entitlement? Even in South Africa, why must the small 10% less whites control 80% of the country? I haven't figured it out. What gives the right? Because you see, Christ is white. Europe is supposed to be white, and they were settling. So what? They need to collect and get the resources. They need to claim the land. This information, what we're doing here, what this project is about, is trying to find out then who is entitled to the land. Why is it that you're entitled to the land? If you came here not 400 years ago or 500 years ago into your European paradise because Europe was black, then where are you from? If you're coming out of a lab, then own it, claim it, Be proud of it. That is your ancestry. But do not possess the lands and slave us. That look, the millionaires, we're not. The billionaires, we're not. The wealth of the whole planet is housed in hands of people that don't look like us. And yet we are not millions. And this is the lie. They want us to believe that we had control of the planet thousands of years ago. They want to go back to 100,000 years ago. So we're disconnected from the land. When this painting shows up, and this is literally 300 years ago, and we know even 200 years ago, these people were still in charge, still ruling, sitting on kingly thrones, like globally, not just Africa. Africa remains a home, our home, Black people's home. But we were also in these other places of Sweden, of Poland, of Germany. So this is the information that the young people need to digest and process, and they need to embrace it and take it on and eat it and have it transformed into their home being. They need to accept it, embrace it. They need this information more than anything, like air and water. It's essential because we need to have a concept of self. If we don't have a concept of self, guess what? We don't know where we're going, and we will always be spoken down to, taken advantage of, and then saying, no, you need to just survive and live on $1 a day. That's your worth. And we say no, because our fathers ran the world. Our God is a brother, is Black. What right do you have to keep us, literally in chains? And this is the freedom that is needed in Africa, in every part of the world, but in Africa too, because the sense that your brothers left in chains and did nothing, this counters all of it. This information, because there is no history. And we're showing it from the families. So I looked upon the families here. I did the first two, and you have done the others. And you can see that when it comes to the plotting of the history, here you have the Jobert family. And though you really had a Jobert family, but they were Black French, as in my records, but I could not find these particular people with a distinct Hebrew, Black Hebrew names like Abraham. I could not see, and Peter, of course, is a biblical name, Peter. I could not find these particular persons. And then same with Rendsburg. I could not find them. Now, I found Rendsburg in the tree, but I could not find these specific persons. And the ones in the tree might have been white, granted, but they were in the mid 1800s. And that's when these cloning, early to mid 1800s, that's when that cabbage baby roll happened. So we can understand that they might have been as correctly portrayed. But when you go back to the 1700s and the 1600s and the 1500s, then there's no way that those persons could have been white. So let's pause here. So this exercise we're doing for Kenya shows the earlier white settlers for Kenya. And then we can do this in other countries. The biggest prize would be South Africa, because the South Africans need to know. Tonight, I did a program with Guy Anderson, and it would feature today about Tartarian cabbage babies and how the South African babies came to South Africa in little cages. Again, in cages. They didn't come as prisoners, they came in cages. And that's their story, that's their history. And they need to own it and claim it. And then, of course, give up most of that land, because that land doesn't belong to them. There's no right to the land. You cannot claim what you say your ancestors took, because their story is the white Dutch came in the 15 and 1600s and settled and took the land. But they arrived in the 1800s as babies. They were adults in the mid to late 1800s. That's just the other day. There's no right to claim the land, which needs to be given up.
I had a few questions for each one of you. maybe to summarize the talk, but it makes me sick in this generation, knowing that you can be fed over and over false narratives, false information, that you get to a point where you believe you're what you're being told you are, that is not true. And this one, again, you being told a false narrative, then you pass that false information to your generations to come, that they are born believing what they are not. Africa, we have been told, or we have grown up knowing, we are born in poverty, we deserve to, we need to be helped. But there's always a question I ask myself, especially for those who have had a chance to go to school all the way to campus. We have brilliant minds. We have brilliant minds. We have brilliant kids. We have people with brilliant ideas. Here in Kenya alone, I think we came up with the mobile money app, as I think it was the first in the entire world. So it just shows you it's a narrative that you have been given to start and fear the whites, or carry forward the white narrative that they are the best, they are the most capable. And even when they see, I think in countries like Congo, where probably have been following up in countries that have minerals and all these corporations that come to work there, they make you feel like you don't have the manpower to develop the minerals and the resources that you have. It must be taken to their country to be processed, then brought back to you in handouts. It's just belittling you and still continue to press that narrative of you continue to believe that actually you are worthless. You are worthless. And the discussion, the two of you, the research that you have had, to me, it was just an eye opener, or just cementing what all along I've always questioned. So I believe this platform, and the more that you are going to engage, it's going to be an eye opener for so many people, especially this generation that is learning. You can't fool all the people all the time. There is that quote of a famous musician who was Bob Marley. You can't fool all the people all the time. There comes a time where your evil motive comes to an end or backfires on you. And so I think the job that we have, probably I and David here in Kenya, is to make sure people get to know their origin and not what politicians will sell you as, they have their own agendas to gain from these whites and everything. But to just honestly tell people in the villages, do you care where you come from? Do you want to know your story? And also, I think for Mr. David, who is a historian, even when you're digging these stories, can we even ask these grandmothers who are 100 years old, because we have them in the villages, have they heard of some particular names? And they will tell you they don't. But we brush them off by saying their memory is, not capable of recalling. We say they're old. No, it's because they usually tell us there was no one like that, or they didn't come across such a name. So these are good platform for especially journalists and researchers, for people who want to actually help their nations, help their countries. And the conversation that you have had when I was silent, just on its own, it's a testimony enough to trigger something that can bring about a wake-up call in so many people.
We're just looking at the white history of the colonizers, because we throw around the term. We throw around, say, colonizers every time. Even when I spoke into Zuma, and he's from South Africa, it's colonizers, and they're the ones demonized. Well, if we find out that these colonizers were call it cabbage baby link. They were not really European. That changes the whole narrative because we come back to this. We come back to this, painting of the black, our African brothers who lived, not just visited, lived in Europe, made Europe, developed Europe just 200-300 years ago. So with this kind of recency, not thousands and thousands of years, just 200 years, this is the other day, that changes your whole mindset. So, what are your thoughts about what you learned and discovered just from this small exercise? Because this was to look at the prominent family that came there.
Yes,
And they were like cowboys. They had no heritage, no history.
I was reading somewhere about George Orwell. He said that we are capable of believing things we know to be untrue. And uh, to be sincere, there's a lot of misinformation being spread outside here, a lot of uh, false and unproved information being spread outside here. And first of all, the first thing that I believe the Europeans, or rather the colonizers, succeeded in doing was killing the belief in a black man that uh, you are not capable of doing anything. You're not capable of inventing. You're not capable of thinking clearly. We must think with you. If you want us to work with you, must think with us, or rather, you you have to allow us to think for you. You have to allow us to invent for you. You have to allow us to be the origin of everything. And if you now flip the coin, or rather, if you flip the argument of that point, you'll find out that, wow, even as Africans, we have been uh, the origin of even the philosophy, because you find out there is a lot of stolen philosophy from Africa. Go read about this gentleman that I love, by the name J.M. James. He wrote a book, The Stolen Legacy. Unfortunately, he was killed days after launching his book, The Stolen Legacy. But you'll find out that there's a lot of false information being spread about Africa, about uh, the superior white man. And whatever we are discussing here, something that I'm going to bed with tonight, is that the colonizer didn't come. They came with uh, a lot. They were not even clear about their mission, because as you were discussing the Ludwig, the Kraft and the Redman, you'll find out that these people, they were either explorers and at the same time they were missionaries. You see, because they had no clear mission. They don't know what they are doing, and you'll find out that the man who came to spread the gospel uh, identifies himself as the first European man to see Mount Kenya. That I'm talking about now, the red man, and that's so disturbing. Because why are you not clear about whatever you are doing? And the other thing is, what are the other records of your doings in the country? What were you doing before you were recorded that you died back in German? You see, there's a lot of information to be revealed about those people, because they did we don't the time they spend in Kenya is not even clear. You cannot trace the time they were in Kenya from now 1840, I don't know, to up time. And whatever they were doing, it's not clear about it, because is were they the traders, or were they the explorers, or were they the missionaries? That is another question to question their mission. You see, and the most disturbing fact again is that as much as these people came uh, to spread gospel, or rather the Christianity world, they came and told the Africans that you are gods, or rather the things you believe in, they are not right. The things you are doing, they're against the human nature. And why are we Africans and but before that, Africans were proud of what they were doing. Africans were proud of their culture, their norms, and the way they worshipped. But you are coming and trying to tell them that, okay, this is the perfect God, or rather, this is the perfect way of worshiping. So you people, you should practice our way. Okay? View it in our way, because your God is inferior, your norms are inferior. So that is so disturbing, Dr. Wilton, and I thank you for the opportunity. I know the best way of identify. Let us now go. I know I've seen you have a perfect way of now making the family tree. I, from my view, we can just start family to family. After family, let us have our whole episode discussing one family and everything. Then the other episode we discuss another family, because there are a lot of families here in Kenya, and from that even we can try and solve some issues about the lands, because these are the same people who are affecting the story of land. Yeah, the land system in Kenya is one of the biggest uh, reason why we have a lot of conflicts in our country. All of our conflicts, the fact of the issues of tribalism, they're all based with the land. How land was being shared, how land was being taken now to give the white settlers, who now we have just seen that they tracked, or rather they used the ocean from South Africa to Kenya. And why were they being credited? Were there any criteria they used while giving back the lands to the Africans, and what are the solutions, or rather what are the ways we can use to solve it? And I appreciate this, and one day we'll be there, Doc. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
The people that came as missionaries were trying to tell you about a superior God that looked like them, but then the God is not looking like them. The God is a black man, and that even the image of God was changed and distorted. So their God, they're accusing you about your tribal, your beliefs. And yes, the blacks were worshiping a black God. When you even go today in the oldest churches in Europe and in North Africa and Middle East, the oldest churches still have the black Madonnas and the black Jesus. Even today, the oldest churches still have and carry that. But the bigger churches, the modern churches, would have the white Jesus on the cross. So these missionaries that came as colonizers, but then the colonizers were not even the right color. The people who colonized would have been black people. That's the biggest lie of all. They say that the colonizers were white. Only the ones that came after, the ones that inherited and got the lands, they showed up as white. But they have no history, really, no story, no pedigree, no legacy. And we have to, again, correct it for the next generation. So thank you, gentlemen. With that, I said, good evening, good night to everyone. This is concluding episode 20, looking at a deep dive at the white ancestry, some of the important families of Kenya. And we hope that we will be able to duplicate this work in other African countries as well. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, David. Thank you, Samuel.